infinite wisdom and providential goodness, has appointed the offices of rulers and councils for the welfare of society and the just government of man. We beseech thee to behold thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast pleased to call to the performance of such important trust in our island. Let thy blessings descend upon us here in assembly gathered, and grant that we may, as in thy presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interests thou hast committed us to our charge. All which we ask and seek in thy name, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mr. President, I rise to move a motion for the approval of the order paper as circulated.
The question is that the order paper as circulated be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Good morning all. I wish to make a statement in respect to the Youth Parliament. As you no doubt would recall that the Nevis Island Assembly CPA branch attended the Youth Parliament in Cayman Islands earlier this year. And the record would show that the matter dealt with Nevis was a judge, the best speaker and the team. And to this end, I wish to publicly thank those persons who assisted in the group attendance at the conference. It was not an easy task in terms of getting the necessary funding, because, as I've been saying all over, it is not a government issue but a CPA issue, and the Nevis branch of the CPA has always assisted. And I publicly want to put on record our thanks to the Nevis Island administration, Mr. Roberto Liebert Lefko, Oscar Walters of SL Hosford and Company Limited, the Nevis Land and Housing Corporation, Mr. Llewellyn Keynes, Nisbet Plantation, and the reliable motors of Mr. Carl Claxton. Those organizations, company institutions have helped us to partially defray the costs for the attendance at that conference. I must say at this time that the next conference would be in Trinidad next year. And we no doubt would be seeking assistance towards that end. It's early days yet, but I am just giving the public notice that we would be asking for their assistance once again. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise to make a very brief statement, just to update the House and the public that late last evening, we received word that there was a massive explosion at the dormitory that houses some students at the Medical University of the Americas. We gather from the information received thus far that 2 students have been badly injured in that explosion. I myself was at the hospital late last night and observed the hospital staff trying to stabilize both of those 2 students. I've also been advised that one of the students was taken via air ambulance somewhere around 2 o'clock this morning and taken to the United States for additional care. The other student is still with us here and receiving care at our hospital until that student too can be medevaced to the United States. We gather that the students are 28 years old and 31 years old. Both were in their final stages of their sojourn here at the Medical University of the Americas. We also gathered both are American citizens, and naturally we are concerned. The MUA is a significant employer and a significant contributor to Nevis, and we are certainly concerned about what happens there and concerned about the welfare of the students at this time. We are uncertain at this stage as to the cause of the explosion, but I believe that the relevant authorities have the situation well in hand and are undertaking the necessary investigation. I wanted just to say that briefly to assuage any concerns that the public may have, because I gather that there's been a lot of chatter, as one would expect, but in the circumstances we do not know much more than what I'm indicating, and we will continue to work very closely with the authorities and with the Medical University of the Americas to ensure that the safety and security of their students continues to be preserved. I will ask the House, of course, and the public to pray for these 2 students who are clearly in some distress, and we trust and hope and pray that they both will be able to recover fully and that there will be no loss of life in these very tragic circumstances. So I wanted to just, as I said, update the House on that and to indicate that as I have more information, I will share that information so that all of us here, can continue to understand the situation and continue to pray for the very best for these 2 students who have suffered gravely based on the initial information that we've had. So thank you for that, Mr. President, and thank you for allowing me the brief intervention just to say what we know at this point. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. If you would allow me, I too would like to add to what the Honorable Premier just said. Our hearts go out to the family of the 2 students who were to the 2 students who were badly damaged and injured, and we pray for their recovery. Mr. President, my brief statement this morning was to join the Premier, who in his press conference earlier this week introduced that Ms. Zanella Claxton will now take up the official appointment as the Principal Education Officer here on Nevis. I want to join the rest of the government in congratulating her on her appointment. She's a brilliant young lady, and I believe that she will be equal to the task that we have now given to her. She has already shown leadership. She headed up the Department of Youth for the past 5 years, and I think all around the island of Nevis we have seen the good work that she has been doing, and we hope that she will continue to do that good work in the role as the PEO. Equally, I would like to say our profound thanks to the outgoing PEO, Mrs. Palsy Wilkin. She has given excellent service in the role of PEO over the past 5 years or so. And even before that, she would have given many years of service in the field of education on the island of Nevis. So I want to wish her all the best in her future endeavors, and clearly to thank her for her hard work and dedication throughout the years. I would also like to send some congratulations to Mr. Craig David, who now takes up the role as the Director of Information Technology here on the island of Nevis for the Nevis Island Administration. I've known Craig for a very long time, and I do believe that he is a capable young man, and he would be equal to the task of heading up the Information Technology Department. We all know that technology is the way of now, and it is becoming more and more important as time goes by. Equally, I would like to send out our thanks to Mr. Quincy Prentice, who recently demitted office as the Director of Information Technology. He has now moved on to other pursuits, but I would like to say our thank yous to him because he did a remarkable job while he was the Director of the Information Technology Department. And it is my hope that he would be equally as successful in whatever his endeavors are now. Thank you, Mr. President.
A pleasant good morning to you, Mr. President, and I would like to also say good morning to the listening public, those who are listening via Von Radio, the internet, social media. I rise to update the House and the general public on two major issues, really, happening in the Ministry of Health. I want to preface that by saying big things are happening in health. And even though I would want to place on record every single thing that is happening presently, I would just bring you up to speed with two very important happenings in health. First, I would like to give a report on the extension or the expansion of work done at the Alexandra Hospital. And Mr. President, with your permission, kindly allow me to refer to this report received from the construction manager, Mr. Billy Claxton. As you are aware, there are two contractors who have been contracted to undertake the hospital expansion. Mr. Wedge of Wedge Construction, he is responsible for the construction of the physiotherapy wing, the pediatric isolation wing, and laboratory wing. And his contract with variation is to the tune of some $7.2 million. Evelyn Construction, Clive Evelyn of Evelyn Construction, he is responsible for the operating theater and the radiology wing. And his contract with variation is to the tune of $9.1 million. And so overall, Mr. President, we are looking at some 16 point something million dollars. Thank you very much, the mathematicians behind. Some $16.3 million of work to be done at the Alexandra Hospital over the next 24 months. So far, Mr. President, I want to report that from the wedge construction team, the pediatric isolation wing footing and foundation walls, it is 100% completed. The laboratory wing, footing and foundation walls, 50% completed. The physiotherapy wing, footing and foundation walls, 90% completed. And the associated corridor, footing and foundation walls, 40% completed. There is also a cistern being built under the bottom of this section, which would hold 35,000 gallons of water, and this is 100% completed. So, Mr. President, that side from the wedge construction is really going at a pace, Mr. President. On the other end, where we find the Evelyn's construction team, the operating theater, and there's a storage being built underneath there, 100% completed. The radiology wing, the footing, sorry. We are still in the foundation stage. So what I'm referring to, Mr. President, is the work that is done in the basement or the initial stage, the footing, foundation stage. The radiology wing footing and foundation walls, 50% completed. Storage area, 100% completed. And the associated corridor footing and foundation walls, 30% completed. And the erection of the operating theater, the steel frame, that is 60% completed. And so I want to report to the general public that so far we are satisfied with the work that has been done, and based on the report given by the construction manager, we are indeed comfortable that the work is going according to plan and is right on target. And so I would like to continue to encourage the nurses and the workers at the Alexandra Hospital to bear with us as we go through this construction phase. I know that they are working under very trying situations, and so I continue to thank them for their efforts, thank them for continuing to deliver sterling service in the healthcare sector. Mr. President, I also want to bring to the attention of the general public a very hurting situation that has arisen. Let me retract. It was going on for a long time, but it has now come to fore, that of illegal dumping. We find a number of persons who are dumping indiscriminately all around the country, and we have now sought to enforce the penalties that are on the books, and if needs be, Mr. President, we will have to revise the legislation to take care of such persons who refuse to comply with the legislations as they stand. Over the past months, we were able, the Department of Environmental Health, along with the Solid Waste Management, have been able to do a number of, serve a number of citations on persons who are dumping indiscriminately. And I am very happy that they have been able to crack down. And I must applaud the general public as well, because since we have started to make these things public, a number of persons have come forward and they have called us and they are letting us know where they have seen persons dumping. I must single out one Kibo of Bath. This gentleman has been on my case from day one, and every week he would call me to tell me, Minister, there is dumping this place and that place. And I must thank him because of his vigilance and because of his passion for dump and persons staying on track. He has come forward and we have done something. So I would like to single him out, and as well as I would like to thank the general public for coming on board. The Ministry of Health has taken a zero tolerance for this illegal action. And we want to encourage persons first and foremost to put your household garbage out only on the days when they will be collected from your area. And we also would like to tell the corporate persons to kindly take your garbage to the landfill. The tipping fees are not exorbitant. And as a matter of fact, there's so much free collection going on there. The metal is collected for free. The green waste is collected for free, and other areas are collected for free. And so we are encouraging persons on construction sites to take their garbage and their waste to the landfill. This, Mr. President, is of concern to us as a government because it has other inherent risks and could lend itself to other diseases. And so I bring before you these two issues from the Ministry of Health. May it please you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, good morning. Big greet to all the members of the House. I rise to briefly give a report on some of the activities that have been taking place in my ministry over the past weeks. And let me start with the area of culture. And I am pleased, Mr. President, to report to this Honorable House and to all the people of Nevis that I would have hosted a press conference in September, early September, to report on the happenings of Culturama and also to report on the finances of Culturama. It is important, Mr. President, to do this. Of course, this is an administration in which we are trying to be as transparent as possible. And I know sometimes persons tend to believe that Culturama makes a lot of money and makes a lot of profit. And so it is important, Mr. President, that we bring the finances to the general public so that they can be aware that the festival is one that is heavily subsidized by the government. It is a festival in which we allow our members of the public to show their skills and their talents, their culture, and it is important that we as an administration support the festival. And so I'm very pleased that I was able to bring this to the members of the general public. And I would also say as well, Mr. President, that in an effort to continue to improve the festival, of course, we are going into our 45th edition in 2019. And in an effort to garner the support as well as the ideas and the suggestions and recommendations of members of the general public, that sometime during the course of this year, before December, we will be having some town hall meetings throughout Nevis in order to get the suggestions and the recommendations of members of the general public. So we want the members of the general public to be aware of this, and when we call these town hall meetings, we would like as much support as possible from the members of the general public. In the area of culture as well, Mr. President, I would like to report to the Honourable House as well that the St. Thomas's Parish would have hosted their annual STT Fest this past month in September. And I say that because the parish festivals are festivals that are sanctioned and supported financially and otherwise by my ministry. And of course, my ministry would have been at the forefront in terms of reviving the parish festivals. And I am very happy to see that the parish festival in St. Thomas's went extremely well. I would like at this point to congratulate the various winners. In the Mr. Physique, Mr. Monique Jerry Jeffers. In the Calypso competition, the winner, the Mighty Suki, was crowned the king. And we had the first runner-up, Daddy Nature, and second runner-up, the Invincible. In the Miss Teen Talent, the winner, Sidondre Fleming. And we had the first runner-up, Jamila Clark, and second runner-up, Shadell Mitchell. And there will be a public announcement, but I would also like to announce as well that the Gingerama Festival will not be held this year. We will forego it this year because some work is due to be done at the festival site, and so we will not be having that festival in December as usual. And since I'm on culture, Mr. President, I would also like at this point to place on record my congratulations to Mr. Antonio Abernathy-Liburd and Mr. Cliff Ginger Walters, who were both honored at the recent Nevis Awards presentation and dinner, which was held this past Saturday, the 29th of September in Maryland. I would like to congratulate Nevis for the work that they continue to do and in honoring Nevisians in various fields. They have been doing it for quite some time, and I must commend them for continuing to look out for Nevisians and the talent that Nevisians have. And this year they would have decided to honor persons in the field of music. Of course, we all know Cliff Ginger Walters and his exploits in writing calypso and singing. I think he is one of the best in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think, let me retract that. I think he's the best in St. Kitts and Nevis at writing lyrics. And I think one of the best in the region. And I think he was very deserving of this accolade. And of course, we know that Mr. Antonio Abernathy-Liburd is into the recording music industry, and he's been doing a sterling job as well. And I'm also pleased, Mr. President, that they are both from my constituency. So I congratulate them wholeheartedly, and I congratulate Nevis for continuing to look out for Nevisians. Mr. President, let me report as well, of course it would have been done at the press conference recently, but I must report as well that the Social Services Department would have done the registration process for the Federal Household Assistance Program, and some 819 persons would have registered. Let me reiterate that all 819 may not receive the assistance, because we are aware that some persons may have been a little bit dishonest in the registration process. And so we are at the verification process now. And after the verification process has been completed, then persons will be made aware as to who will be receiving that assistance. And I would like to thank the hardworking staff at Social Services for the excellent work that they would have done in the registration process. Mr. President, I would also like to report that the Social Policy Unit in my department, in my ministry, in collaboration with the Department of Youth, would have hosted a debating series on the 22nd and the 29th of September at NEPAC. Very educational series, and it would have been focused on the Sustainable Development Goals. We had the Gingerland Secondary, the Charlestown Secondary, and the Nevis Sixth Form College being represented at those debates. On the first night of the competition, we had the Charlestown Secondary coming up against the Gingerland Secondary, and the Charlestown would have won that debate, and the best speaker would have been Briandra Liburd. Let me congratulate her. And on the second night of the debate, Mr. President, we had the Charlestown Secondary taking on the Nevis Sixth Form College. And here again, the Charlestown Secondary emerged the winner, with the best speaker being Dahlia Slack of the Nevis Sixth Form College. So let me congratulate the winners. Let me congratulate the best speakers. Let me congratulate all of the students who took part in that debating series. I think it was a very rewarding experience for the students. And let me also congratulate the teachers and all who were responsible for so ably and so well preparing the students for that debating series. And of course, that debating series was held as a part of the 35th anniversary of the Federation's independence. And the Sustainable Development Unit continues to work hard in terms of educating the members of the general public on the Sustainable Development Goals. And this past Tuesday and Wednesday, we had a two-day Sustainable Development workshop. So kudos to the staff there at that division. Mr. President, I also want to report that this month is being celebrated as the month of the elderly here on Nevis. And this is something that has been happening for the past years. The 1st of October is celebrated as International Day of Older Persons. And of course, the Seniors Division at the Department of Social Services has taken upon themselves to organize a month of activities, not only celebrating the day, but celebrating a month of the elderly. And I must say here, I commend that division wholeheartedly. They have been doing an outstanding job. And our seniors on Nevis, Mr. President, continue to receive excellent care and attention. The programs that we have developed at that department, Mr. President, are probably the best in the region and probably among the best in the world. And I would just like to encourage members of the general public and the family members of our seniors to support the activities that we have included in our month of activities this year. And I'm asking for special support. We have a march tomorrow from the Longstone House up to the ETW Park. Starts at 9. We have a health fair on the 12th, that next Friday, in collaboration with the Mental Health and Health Promotions Units. And we have the appreciation of centenarians on Tuesday the 16th. We have a family fun day at the ETW Park on Thursday the 18th from 10 a.m. And of course, that is the day when the seniors will go out and have fun, do their sporting activities, and we're asking for the support of the public. And for the first time this year, we're having also what is called a family trivia. And that is slated for Saturday, the 27th at NEPAC at 5 p.m. And so we are asking for the support, and we're asking our members of family, of the seniors as well as the general public, to continue to show our seniors love. They are the ones who would have blazed the trail for us, and we want to continue to show our support and our appreciation for our seniors. In the area of sports, Mr. President, I have to say that we had a successful drag race meet this past Sunday. And let me say here, Mr. President, I know drag racing is something that may not have been fully supported by this party in terms of the drag race strip. But the facility is there, Mr. President. And this administration will ensure that the facility is properly used. It is an event, it is an activity that is loved and supported by the young people of Nevis, and we have to continue to show our young people that we are with you. We are with the young, we are with the old, we are with the in-between, right? And so we will support the activities at drag racing, and I must say that this past Sunday, I think was one of the largest crowds we have had at the facility in a very long time. The race should have been held, the meet should have been held in Independence, during Independence, but it was postponed, and we had participation from Nevis, from St. Kitts, from Anguilla, and from St. Martin, and it's good to see that the young people are so excited at this kind of event. And let me just report in terms of the results from the drag racing. In the 13-second class, we had the winner being Samantha Boone from St. Kitts, and the second place being Dylan Smithen of Nevis. In the 12-second class, the winner Valentine Brooks, or Hulk from Anguilla. Second place, Reese Beamer Bailey of Nevis. In the 11-second class, the winner Gary Liber Jr. of Nevis. And second place, Wentworth Smithen of Nevis. In the 10-second class, the winner was Dwayne Zumi, the Costa of St. Kitts. And second place, Clayton Nick Clark of Nevis. In the 9-second class, the winner Darren Bashi Maynard of Nevis. And second place, Eric Millot of St. Martin. And in the outlaw class, that generated so much excitement, Mr. President. The winner, Lorne Daniel with his El Gargamel, and second place, Clifford Bubba Parry with Blackbird. Mr. President, also in the area of sports, I just want to report very quickly that my Department of Sports continues to be at the forefront of organizing activities for our cricket in Nevis. And we will be hosting a tape ball tournament starting this coming Sunday, October the 7th at the ETW Park. 7 club teams have been invited to take part in that tournament, Mr. President. And matches will be played on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. On Wednesdays, the matches will be played at 4:30 and 5:45. On Saturdays at 5 o'clock and at 6:45. And on Sundays at 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And so we are asking persons to come out. We know Nevis is a cricket-loving public, and we are asking persons to come out and support good tape ball cricket under the lights at the ETW Park. And of course, the admission is free. So there's no need for you to stay at home. Sundays, Saturdays are times when people have some free time, and we are asking you to come out and see good cricket. And as I wrap up, Mr. President, I would just like to place on record the absolute gratitude of my ministry for the sterling and outstanding service that has been provided to my ministry, to the Department of Youth in particular, by the outgoing department's head, that's Ms. Zanella Claxton. Of course, it have been reported earlier that she will now be taking up the position of the Principal Education Officer. I would like to congratulate her in this new role. I personally and my ministry would have loved to keep her, but she was needed elsewhere. And so, Mr. President, I want to congratulate her, and I really want to say thanks to her. She would have done a marvelous job as the Director of Youth, implementing a lot of programs, and I think she had the young people of Nevis at heart, and I know she will have the teachers of Nevis at heart. So congratulations to her in a new position, and thank you very much, Janella, for such sterling service to the Department of Youth. Thank you very much. May it please you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I rise to make a brief intervention on this part of the order of business today. And I hope it would not be deemed controversial. As in the case of statement by ministers, it should not be controversial in any way. But I hope it would not be deemed controversial if I were to congratulate you and your staff for ensuring that we're here at least every 2 months, consistent with what we would have pledged to the division public in terms of coming to the House and doing the people's business every 2 months. I want to thank you for ensuring that we're here. And I also want to congratulate you. The ambience here seems somewhat different. I don't know if you did anything new since you were last here, but it just feels good. And it's good to be here this morning. Mr. President, I want to join with the member for Nevis 2 and Premier of Nevis by offering my own little feelings regarding the incident that took place last night. As the representative of St. James, and that's Nevis 4, I was on this scene last night, and I really was distraught by what I saw. It's an unfortunate accident that would have occurred, and of course I want to wish a speedy recovery, albeit it will be a difficult road ahead for the 2 persons who were involved in that particular incident. And of course, you have heard the pledge from the Premier and member for Nevis 2 of the support of the Nevis Island administration in every possible way to ensure that this process is handled in a way that is, good enough for the persons who would have a really difficult road upon which to recover. Such is life, Mr. President. Life can be fleeting, and things happen. And that, as I said, was an unfortunate one. But we continue to pray for their recovery, of course. But, Mr. President, what that brought to the fore last night when I saw the operations taking place there in terms of the fire services, the police, the army, and all of the essential services, the ambulance and so forth, when I saw those persons at work, it brought something to me and suggests to me that the foresight of this particular administration was in order in many ways in terms of what we're doing over there in Newcastle, in ensuring that we rebuild that police station and take it further in terms of ensuring that we have the essential or some of the essential services within the parish of St. James, which of course is a progressive parish, as all are. But as the representative of St. James, I have to beat my chest a little bit because, of course, that's where I'm from, and that's the constituency of the parish that I represent. And when I approached the cabinet of the Nevis Island administration with regards to financing that project, they gave full support, and I want to thank the entire cabinet for their full support. I also want to backtrack a little bit and say that this whole thing started somewhere around 2016, I believe, where we were seeking ways of getting those policemen out of, or the police officers out of that environment. And then, of course, the hurdles we would have had in terms of persons who did not support the particular project being there. They had their objections to it, but we were not daunted. We never wavered. We never relent on our pursuit, to ensure that a police station was rebuilt, but also done in a way that would accommodate fire officers and the fire tender. Because, of course, last night the fire tender would have had to come from all the way here in Charlestown. Minutes were lost, of course, in so doing. But the good news is that we are well on our way to ensuring that these amenities or these facilities are put in place so that at least the northern portion of the island will be taken care of in the event of any adverse or any unfortunate incidents similar to what may have taken place last night. But I still want to commend the officers or the essential personnel who came, because all of them came quickly. And of course, they would have performed their duties to a standard that we can certainly be proud of. But Mr. President, while I'm on the police station, let me give you a quick update as to where we are. 75% of the substructure, meaning walls, flooring, have been done, have been completed. I believe at this point in time they are preparing to put the final decking, that's the roof. It would be a concrete roof, of course. They're preparing to do just that. 30% of the electrical work, plumbing, telecommunication work have been done. That is tremendous progress to this point in time. Remember, this project started in December of last year when the foundation was cut. Indeed, preparations are being made to order all of the necessary windows, such as bulletproof windows, bulletproof doors, and some of the finishing products that will be needed to get that project completed eventually, which we are hoping would be completed somewhere around July of next year. So we're making tremendous progress there, and I want to commend all of the persons involved, meaning the general contractor, the electrician, the plumbers, the persons from the IT department who are dealing with the telecommunication network in that building, and of course all of the necessary persons who supply material to that particular site, because the supplies have to be in time and on time in order to get to the various stages that you want to get to. So I want to commend everyone for their effort and to continue to do the best they can to produce a final product that we can be proud of. Mr. President, I will say to you that that particular structure has already started standing out there. You drive past it all the time. I drive past there all the time, and of course, the Nevis public will traverse the area from time to time. It is going to be an edifice that we'll be proud of when it's all said and done. There's no way we could have had a constituency of St. James without a police station that has had one since 1970, thereabout. So imagine, as the representative, you go out there and break down a building and never rebuild it. I leave it as that. But I am proud that we have decided to reconstruct that police station and have it there to fulfill the demands of the community of St. James and the island on a whole. Mr. President, quickly, let's move on. My time is short. I want to speak briefly on the event that took place on the 20th of September over at Cedar View. That is in Madden's. That's the newest housing development that has been undertaken by the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation. I want to thank the entire cabinet for their support at that particular event, which was the grand opening of that housing community. One of the best, well, it's the newest, but one of the best that we can certainly say that exists here on the island of Nevis. I might be challenged by someone, but I'll be willing to counter any day, because I do believe we have done a remarkable job in producing a development that all of us, not only us as an administration, not only the personnel at the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, but the entire island of Nevis can be proud of that particular development. And here's why, Mr. President. We have sought to take our efforts to a new level in terms of what we produce for our people. Over the years, we have had situations where developments are done in a rushed and haphazard way. We believe if persons are going to be living in these communities, and we want safe and secure and also lovely communities where people are harmonious in many ways, then you have to build these houses properly. You have to have an inviting environment, and that is why I'm proud that we have set a standard over there. And you know, the thing is, Mr. President, with that standard, we can't falter. We can't relent, and we cannot backtrack on what we have done at Cedar View Housing Development. So as we go around the island of Nevis and we do future developments, of course you would see that standard being maintained. And we'll be speaking more about future developments around the island over the next couple of months, next month or two, I must say. But indeed, there are plans afoot to move into other areas. One of the things that would have prohibited or moved in the past is the lack of actual access to government lands. We know that government lands we can always sell to our homeowners at a concessionary rate. But in terms of lands in various constituencies or parishes around the island, St. James, of course, would have the largest government land stock, followed by St. George's, and of course, as you go around the island, you'll say perhaps St. John's, and then government lands are very minimal. Very minimal, if there is any at all here in St. Paul's, for example. But we have sought ways to negotiate with persons in the various constituencies where housing is in demand, and we would be rolling out some new developments over the next couple of months. And I want to say to the general public, or the entire Nevisian public, that we continue to look after the interests of the entire island. Even though it may seem like we're speaking of Cedar View at this point in time. Cedar View is the focus, yes, because that is the newest and the most recent one that we have started. But I can make the commitment from this rostrum at this microphone this morning that we are moving into other areas and we'll be making housing available to every community here on the island that we possibly can provide those housing when needed. Mr. President, in terms of the $10 million we would have gotten in October, November, thereabout of 2016, we have certainly gone ahead and done what we had committed to do to the Social Security Board in terms of building out houses in various parts of the island. I just mentioned Cedar View. Of course, we have built houses from that $10 million in Kuhun, which is in the Cotton Ground area. That is phase 2 of that development. We have built a house in Bath. We don't have any land currently in Bath that we have access to. Certainly we are looking forward to negotiating with persons if there are lands available for sale there. We would have built, I believe, 5 houses up in Cherry Garden. That is phase 2. There were 5 lots that were remaining there that we would have built out. The thinking is, though, there may be a possibility to build more houses in Cherry Garden, which is just below that line of house that we just completed, but we're working with the planning department in order to ensure that we are doing the right things over there. So there is some hope there in Cherry Garden as well in the near future. Of course, I said St. Paul's, we would have some information shortly after we'd have done some negotiations about a new development to be done here in the St. Paul's area. Indeed, we are hoping to do some negotiations as well for lands up there in Gingerland. And I would work with the member for Nevis 3 to ensure that we can bring some housing in the Gingerland area as well. Of course, we did some houses over in the New River area. But of course, if you're from the central part of Gingerland, or you're living in central Gingerland, so to speak, sometimes you have a difficulty going to the to the extreme end of that constituency. So you want to remain in that general area. So that is why I'm saying that we're looking at future lands or some negotiation for some lands in the central Gingerland area, which we're hoping to provide some housing there as well. Mr. President, we also have negotiated for an additional $15 million from the Social Security Board, and I want to thank them for their commitment towards not only the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, not only the Nevis Island Administration, but also to the entire Nevis community, because when they make these loans available, we are not the final beneficiary of those loans, but it is ultimately the homeowner, wherever they find themselves, whether in any of the different constituencies or parishes throughout the island of Nevis. So I want to thank the Social Security Board and on behalf of the entire island of Nevis for their commitment in our young men and young women. And with that commitment, I'm asking our young men and young women to reciprocate that commitment in terms of ensuring that they pay for their houses when they get them. And I put it bluntly because, of course, when you borrow these funds and they are repaid, those monies would be made available in the future for persons who would show some interest 10 years from now 15 years from now to own their own home. So it's a matter of ensuring that we stick to that commitment all around, not just from the NHLDC standpoint, not just from the NIA standpoint, who have guaranteed these loans, but also from the final recipient of these houses. I want to get that commitment from them to ensure that those loans are repaid. But we'll be speaking more about some of the future development, Mr. President, which of course we want to put everything in order before we come to the general public with all of the facts and figures. But I want to say to you as well, out of this $15 million that we have procured, and keep in mind, it is not $15 million given to you immediately. It is drawn down accordingly. So don't think that we have $15 million sitting down there or sitting in some bank somewhere. It is something that is done as we request those drawdowns, we get them accordingly. But I want to point out that some information will be available within the next month thereabout, because we're hoping to have a huge groundbreaking ceremony with respect to one of our major developments that will be undertaken at the NHLDC, and that is University Heights. We have heard about that in the past, but it is going to come to fruition shortly. We'll have a groundbreaking ceremony between now and I believe the start of December, because what we're hoping is that by January we're rolling out this development so that we can have some construction over the course of next year, 2019. University Heights would be sitting on one of those prime properties in St. James at an area called, or in an area called Garners or Lower Spring Hill. It gives you a tremendous view into Frigate Bay and the Southeast Peninsula. So the persons who eventually reside there would have a view that they certainly will love, but they won't be paying the exact cost of that view. It is a tremendous view. I only put it that way, Mr. President, because I am very much overwhelmed by the fact that we are going to be assisting some of our college graduates who have been back here in the island of Nevis and contributing to the development of Nevis for at least 5 years and more. Now it's time for them to own their own home, and we are hoping that we'll be the entity that facilitates that. So we'll be speaking more about that in the next, say, month, thereabout, just over a month. And I'm hoping that persons, at least 18 persons, will be able to benefit from that and will take advantage of this particular scheme that we'll be offering. Mr. President, I said I was going to be brief, but sometimes we get carried away. I want to thank you very much, and may it please you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning to all listeners and viewers who are with us at this time. Mr. President, I rise to make my brief remarks as per the order paper, statements by ministers. And Mr. President, I want to commence my presentation by first of all saying congratulations to Ms. Claxton Zanella. This is a young lady, Mr. President, who I've known from very tender age. I've known her parents, and I have looked from a distance, Mr. President, as to how she would have advanced herself and progressed. And I am happy, Mr. President, to see that one of our young persons would have advanced themselves to the stage where they have been entrusted, so to speak, with, we can almost say, with the direction of education in our country. That, Mr. President, is an awesome responsibility. And I believe that she is very much equipped and capable to take on that responsibility. I believe that she would not only be an asset to the Minister of Education and to the Ministry of Education, but I believe also, Mr. President, that she would have some transforming role to play as it relates to education on the island of Nevis. So I really want to congratulate her, and I want to wish her every success in her endeavors. Mr. President, I also want to say thanks to the outgoing PEO, Ms. Wilkin. Ms. Wilkin, Mr. President, is one of those civil servants who have, in my mind, never said no. She have always been able to respond to the call of duty and to nation building. And I want to, as well, wish her, I am not going to say retirement because I don't believe that she's going to ever retire. She will always, Mr. President, play her part as it relates to the development of the island of Nevis. So I want to wish her everything that is good as well, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to turn to the planning department, one of the areas that I've been charged with. And I want to say to the general public that at the moment, the planning department is engaged in some workshop as it relates to improve construction practices as it relates to the construction of small buildings. Mr. President, we are all aware of the devastation that was caused in Dominica and other neighboring territories. And while we here on the island of St. Kitts and Nevis may not have received the level or the extent of damage as those islands would have received, they are our neighbors. And we obviously would have had to learn and observe some of what would have happened on those islands. But importantly, Mr. President, our Caribbean Development Bank would have also taken note. And they would have engaged in some training of our planning departments throughout the region. And what our planning department is currently engaging is as a result of the training that CDB would have offered a few months ago. So, Mr. President, the training has now come to Nevis, and our planning department is engaged with our contractors, our architects, and our draftsperson to, as it were, improve the practices of what they do as it relates to the architecture and the actual construction, Mr. President, of these buildings. And I want to encourage, Mr. President, all of the contractors who were invited to please turn up to these training, and the draftsperson to also make sure that they partake of the information and the knowledge that is expected to be imparted in this training. Mr. President, to date, the planning department would have received some 215 applications for approval. And at the same point last year, we would have received some 204. So it shows, Mr. President, that persons are still interested in constructing of their own homes. We have, Mr. President, some 168 plans that were already approved. And 14 of those plans are still waiting final approval. It would be interesting to note, Mr. President, that in St. John's, we have had some 49 applicants, 21 in St. James, 20 in St. Paul's, and I want to see that number in St. Paul's increase. I want to see that, Mr. President, that number of 20, and I believe that the good Minister of Housing and I will have a conversation. I want to see, Mr. President, that number of St. Paul's, in St. Paul's increase. St. Thomas's, 43, and St. George's, Mr. President, 20. Seems like St. George's and I tie again.
Yes, we have to go.
So, Mr. President, the people of Nevis are continuing to invest in their homes. And I want to join with my colleague, the member for Nevis number 4, to encourage our people to make sure that they fulfill their commitment once they would have acquired the financing to construct their home. It is probably the largest single investment, Mr. President, that any individual would undertake in their lifetime. So I want to encourage persons to take it very seriously. Mr. President, I want to turn to Labor Department. And I want to advise this House, Mr. President, that in July, the Labor Department, Mr. President, would have conducted a job fair. And I believe, Mr. President, we would have catered for about 75 persons. But to our astonishment, Mr. President, we had some 114 persons attending that job fair, Mr. President. 69 students attended. But, Mr. President, this is the interesting part, which I believe that even the Labor Department was very much encouraged by. 45 business representatives also attended. And that, Mr. President, is saying to us that the businesses on the island of Nevis are also seeking ways to improve the quality of service that their employees give to our public. And we were very much encouraged, Mr. President, by the numbers. We have already started to plan and prepare for next year's job fair. Mr. President, we were able to have placed 55 students out of that job fair during the summer. And some 9 students, Mr. President, or 9 persons who were seeking employment were able to retain their jobs after the probationary period. I would have liked, Mr. President, to see that 9 to have been the all 55. But we are hopeful. So I want to, Mr. President, congratulate the staff there at our Labor Department for their hard work and as they continue to improve and educate the general public as it relates to labor matters. Mr. President, I am also charged with the responsibility of Post. And at the moment, the Post is currently celebrating Postal Month. On Friday, Mr. President, we participated in an awareness march through Charlestown from the E.T. Willett Park, along the Samuel Hunkins Drive, and ended at the post office. And the focus, Mr. President, was on technology. Because I believe that we all recognize that technology have now taken over how we do things. The post office in itself, as it relates to mail, is almost becoming obsolete, Mr. President. So we have to come up with new ideas and reinvent ourselves as to how we serve the general public as it regards to post. So we had that awareness march, Mr. President, on Friday. On Sunday, Mr. President, the staff worship at the Charlestown Methodist Church. We also, Mr. President, are hoping to have a hike on the 27th of October to the waterfalls. The staff, Mr. President, will be testing themselves. So they will be having a quiz. There will also be, Mr. President, an award ceremony. And one of my favorite, I'm not certain yet if I will make the grade. There will be a road relay, Mr. President, on the 2nd of November. I'm trying to make a team, Mr. President, for that road relay. That will be on the 2nd of November. Mr. President, it is important to know that post in itself is extremely important to the development of our country. And it is, Mr. President, an area that we will continue to pay close attention to, because it is something, or it is a department that I believe have great potential, not only to the benefit of our country, but also to the Treasury, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to turn to the Water Department. And as the member for Nevis number 2 would have indicated yesterday at on Tuesday, at his press conference, tomorrow will be a great day on the island of Nevis, Mr. President. That will be the day when the people of Nevis will once again take ownership of their wells from Bede. And that for me, Mr. President, will be an occasion that all Nevis and all Nevisians should look forward to. It is, for me, Mr. President, almost declaring our independence once again. And I want to place on record here in this House how grateful we are to BEAD for the input that they would have made in the development of this country. And, Mr. President, I will say more about that tomorrow, but I just want to say to the people of Nevis that come tomorrow, once again, they will take ownership of all of the water on the island of Nevis. Mr. President, the Water Department continues to do tremendous work as it regards to the replacement of some cast iron pipe throughout the length and breadth of Nevis. And Mr. President, at the end of May, they would have completed some 2,000 feet of 4-inch from replacing cast iron pipe, Mr. President, in the Jessops area. That is an area, Mr. President, that we know would have had some issues with the sustainability of a constant pressure of water on the island of Nevis. And so we have replaced some 2,000 feet, Mr. President, in Jessops at the end of May. Mr. President, we have also completed the Rollins to Pond Hill leg, Mr. President. Some 4,000 feet of 10-inch and 8-inch pipes, Mr. President. Mr. President, also from Westbury to Jessup leg, and this is an area, Mr. President, where we are facing some challenges. We have some land matters there to sort out, but we have completed some 30% of that leg, Mr. President, of 8-inch PVC pipe, Mr. President. Morning Star to Church Ground, Mr. President, we have completed that at the end of August, which was some 2,000 feet of 8-inch HDPE pipes, which is high-density polyurethane pipes, Mr. President. We have also replaced some 1,500 feet of cast iron pipe with 8-inch pipe, Mr. President, in the same area. Mr. President, we still have a lot of work to do as it relates to the CDB project. And we are still of the view that we can get a significant portion of that work completed this year. We still have some 5,000 feet to complete in the Camps to Shoys Road area. We still have, Mr. President, some 6,000 feet of 4-inch pipe in the Upper Jones area. And we still have, Mr. President, some 3,000 feet in the Maddens to Butlers area. Mr. President, we have completed phase 1 of the Brown Hill section, where we would have replaced, Mr. President, the cast iron pipe in the Brown Hill area. And we are hoping to complete the remaining section of that once the second phase of Brown Hill Road would have commenced. Mr. President, we are hoping that by the 15th of this month, which is in a few weeks' time, we can commence the replacement of pipes in the Quaddock Road area. That is an area, Mr. President, where we hope to have the road from Zone 1 Auto all the way down to the base rehabilitated, but we must replace the old cast and iron pipes, Mr. President, in that area. And we are hoping to commence the pipe work in that area on the 15th of October, which is the tentative date, Mr. President, at this time. Mr. President, we continue to do major upgrades in the various villages. And in the hard times area, Mr. President, we would have replaced a 3/4-inch PVC pipe to a 4-inch PVC pipe. And when we think, Mr. President, of 3/4 inch to 4 inch. One would recognize the issues that the residents would have faced in those areas. 3/4 inch, not much of a water pressure in those areas, Mr. President. In the Hamilton area, we would have replaced some 1-inch mains with some 4-inch pipe, Mr. President, also improving the pressure in those areas, the water pressure in those areas. So, Mr. President, the folks at the Water Department continue to stay busy. They continue, Mr. President, to go beyond the call of duty as it relates to the mission that we have given them on the island of Nevis. Mr. President, I want to turn to some civil works. And with your permission, Mr. President, I want to quote directly from the report from the Director of Public Works as it relates to a number of ongoing civil works projects. Mr. President, as you are aware, we have the CCTV building that is ongoing at the moment, right there in Charlestown. And Mr. President, this is an important project for the safety and the security of the island of Nevis. And we are at a stage, Mr. President, where we still believe that we can complete that project by the end of the year. We had a slight delay, Mr. President, but we are hoping that we can still complete it by the end of the year. Because that, Mr. President, is an important project for the safety and the security of the island of Nevis. We have, Mr. President, some additional work at the Charlestown Primary School, where we have added on a top floor at the principal office, the staff room, so to speak. Mr. President, we met a situation there where the head teacher and the deputy and the secretary area, they were really cramped for space. And so we took the decision, Mr. President, to have that area expanded with a top floor. We are making some good progress, Mr. President, and we expect that that also will be completed in another month, month and a half, Mr. President. Mr. President, we move to the additional classrooms at the Ivor Walters Primary School. And Mr. President, it is no secret that the Ivor Walters School is overcrowded. I believe, Mr. President, that when the village, so to speak, of Cherry Garden was constructed, no provision was put in place to accommodate the increase in the population. And so the student population at the Ivor Walters would have increased exponentially overnight with that Cherry Garden project, Mr. President. And we are, at the moment, involved in what we call is a temporary fix, Mr. President, where we would have added a few additional classrooms and bathrooms, Mr. President, to alleviate that situation at the Ivor Walters Primary School. We are hoping in very short order that we will have a new wing at the Ivor Walters Primary School. And I'm hoping, Mr. President, that before long, that wing can become a reality for the people and the students of the Ivor Walters and the neighboring areas, Mr. President. Mr. President, we continue to work on the Brown Hill Road rehabilitation. We would have asphalt the area from on top of the hill all the way down to the church. And we are at the moment completing a few culverts. And we expect, Mr. President, to finish the area to the basketball court in a few weeks' time. So that is an ongoing project, Mr. President. And I want to say to the people of Brown Hill, I want to apologize to them, Mr. President, for the inconvenience which they would have been enduring for the last few weeks. It is in an effort, Mr. President, to make things better for them. So I want to ask them to bear with us. I want to, Mr. President, thank the landowners in those areas, because the government cannot take on these rehabilitation and these improvement projects without the cooperation of the landowners, who have been willing to give up sections of the alliance, Mr. President. And I want to thank them for their involvement and their role as well. Mr. President, we are still undertaking some additional rehabilitation work or some of the village roads in the Hanleys Road area. When we did the main carriageway rehabilitation, Mr. President, there were a number of village roads that needed some improvement, and we are continuing that process, Mr. President. The Hamilton area, Mr. President, we have done the area that goes across by the first player from these parts to have made the West Indies team. And we are finishing up that area, Mr. President, and we hope to have that completed very shortly. We have completed, Mr. President, a section in the Jessops area, and I also want to thank the residents of Jessops for bearing with us while we undertook that project, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to conclude my presentation, Mr. President, by encouraging our road users, Mr. President, to be careful when the Public Works Department and the Water Department are engaged in certain rehabilitation work. We continue to get, Mr. President, some complaints that drivers are not driving as careful as we would like them to drive. And some of the workers, Mr. President, on these projects are becoming a little bit uneasy. So I want to make this appeal, Mr. President, to our road users to slow down a bit and continue to drive with due care and attention around these projects, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you, and may it please you.
Personal explanations. Introduction of bills and first reading.
Mr. President, I rise again to introduce and have read for the first time in this Honorable House the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. President, I rise to second motion.
Is that the bill shortly entitled the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency Amendment 2018 Bill be read the first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Bill to amend the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency Ordinance, Chapter 6.12, end bracket, and for matters related thereto or connected therewith.
Bill has been read the first time.
Mr. President, I rise once again to and seek leave to introduce and have read for the first time the Nevis Physical Planning and Development Control Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion.
Is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Physical Planning and Development Control Amendment Bill 2018 be read the first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Nevis Physical Planning and Development Control Ordinance, Chapter 6.09, end bracket, and for matters related thereto or connected therewith.
The bill has been read the first time.
Adjournment.
Mr. President, I rise to seek your leave and to ask for the adjournment of this honorable House. Sign and die.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that this honorable House be adjourned, sign and die. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House be adjourned.